Hello, today we are inside for a change because the weather has turned and it's been raining and storming quite a lot. My microphone can't pick up anything outside because of how windy it is. So I thought we'd just roll with it and do today's video snugly inside. Luca's asleep in her bed and I've got my cup of tea. And today I am doing a video on 10 things that I wish I knew before we moved to somewhere remote. I've been thinking quite a lot about this recently, about everything that this place has surprised me with. And I don't think that if I had been more aware of how life here would play out, that we wouldn't have lived here or moved here in the first place. And in some ways, I would have been pleasantly surprised. But I do, in other ways, I suppose sometimes wish that I had been a little bit more prepared or had more realistic expectations. Just because sometimes I think when you set your expectations really high or really differently to how the outcome plays out, then you always feel a little bit like you failed or you feel a bit disappointed when actually this is such a wonderful place to live and it has offered us so many things. So I am going to get into it now. Number one is that I wish that I knew just how lovely and welcoming everybody would be. Honestly, one of the most frequent things that I was told or warned before we moved here was that I might not find it so welcoming moving to somewhere in Wales that was very remote and rural. I might find that a lot of people would be rude to me or not be very happy about the fact that I was living here. And truthfully, I've noticed that a little bit on one of my YouTube videos, the one about living here that went a little bit viral. But actually being here, everybody has been so kind. I think I've never met kinder people than the locals of Pembrokeshire. So when we moved in, I was a bit nervous and a bit apprehensive about that. But I really didn't have any reason to be. So I wish that I knew just how lovely everybody would be here. It would have made me feel a lot more relaxed going into it, I think. The second thing, I had very skewed expectations, I think, about what moving somewhere like this would do for my social life. So I felt quite socially overwhelmed before we lived here. I had a great social life on my own, but then getting together with Alex meant that we also had the addition of his social life, and we did things together, and he did things with me and my friends, and I did things with him and his friends. And then not only was I visiting my family and he visiting my family now, but also I would be visiting his family. And it felt as though my social calendar, or my calendar in general, would fill up months in advance before I'd even had a chance to think, what do I want to do on those weekends? In all honesty, I did not know how to say no, so I used to accept and say yes to every single invitation. And I love my friends, and Alex's friends are great too, so I was very grateful to be getting the invitations in the first place. And Alex was the same. But I just found the busyness of life so overwhelming, and I wanted more time to be able to just enjoy the stillness and the peace of being at home, for example, or being able to just have a weekend with no plans. And I assumed that by living here we would have more of a reason to be able to say no to things, and it would highlight the things that really mattered so we could say yes to those things. Now the reality is that often we actually have to say no to things that we really do want to go to, because everything requires so much planning and effort, especially now that we've got this little charming monster, and everything requires also so much money and time in the car or time on the train, that even now if we only say yes to 10% of the things that we did before, that 10% requires so much energy that it doesn't really feel as though I'm less socially tired than I was before we moved here, but I also don't feel as though I see my friends anywhere near enough, so it's really conflicting. And when people come to visit us here, of course, they're coming a really long way, and so they want to be able to stay for days and days at a time, which usually requires us taking time off work, and I find hosting really tiring. So I would much rather be able to have the opportunity to just see my friends for a couple of hours rather than it always having to be committing to do a full weekend. But having said that, we definitely do have weekends now where we're just at home, which is something that we never used to have. We have created a lot more peace here than we have had in the past, but we really had to fight for that peace, and we had to learn to say no to things. And sometimes it felt, and still feels, really sad and really heartbreaking to have to say no to those things, and we have to deal with the fear of missing out. It's probably the most complex thing about living here, and I could do a whole video just about this topic, but I am going on a tangent now, so we'll move on to the next. Although point number 3 is sort of related, and it's just how isolating living here could be, because again, if I do want to go and see any of my friends, or my family for that matter, I can't just hop on a bus or a train and see them within half an hour or even an hour. It takes lots of planning and lots of time to get there. And so I have Alex, and I have Lupa and Pip and our neighbour next door, and you guys on the internet, and my friends online, and I definitely speak to them more via messages now than I ever did before I moved here. But sometimes I still really crave that human connection of being in somebody else's energy that isn't my immediate bubble, and that can feel really lonely. I've actually filmed a whole video for this topic on my members channel, which either will have already been released or is going to be released next week or the week after. I'm going to America next weekend, and so I've kind of pre-filmed a few videos to be scheduled, and I can't remember when anything is being released, but it's going to be out there within the next few weeks. So if you do want to talk about this topic a little bit more, then that is an option over there. The 4th thing I wish I knew is how grounding it would be to live somewhere so far away from any form of comparison. I don't think I realised just how much this affected me. I know it affected my partner, but being this far away from society at large means that I'm not thinking about my place within that society and comparing my earnings, my career status, my home, anything about my life with where anybody else around me is at. And I think that's sadly, it's such a natural thing for humans to do. But being here has been so grounding, and it's helped me develop internal roots and confidence in a way that I never had before. And I really hope that that confidence will translate later on when, and if we do move back into society, into civilization, I hope that I'll be able to hold that and not be easily swayed by others' opinions or what other people are doing or wearing or whatever. But at the moment, I'm just grateful that I can have this space now that allows me the freedom to just focus on what I'm doing and what my career is and what my financial status is and the people that I love and my own relationship and my own friendships and my own family relationships, rather than everything else going on. And I think that also, that kind of peace that I got from being so far away was one of the many things that inspired me to leave social media as well, because I just craved to be away from any sense of comparison at all. The 5th thing I wish I knew was how much work goes into maintaining a house and a big garden. Our house is very small, but it is a hungry house. It needs so much work doing to it all the time, and so many things that we haven't got around to doing even after more than a year of living here. When we moved in, I had so many expectations of everything that we would achieve and get done in a short space of time, and knowing how much money, headspace and time goes into making even the simplest of improvements. We got a quote to paint. We've got, like, the other side of the house looks like it's rotting. It's just not very nice to look at. And we got a quote to get it painted professionally. I think we're going to probably end up doing it ourselves, but we got a quote, and bearing in mind this is just one wall of the house. It's not a very big wall, it's a single story, and the quote was £4,000. And I don't have that much disposable cash around that I can just throw £4,000 at somebody painting a wall of the house. There are always so many things that need to be done on the inside and the outside, mainly the outside. So many things that need to be trimmed and mowed and cut back and sawed apart. We had loads and loads of trees fall down on our land recently. Alex and his dad have been working their way through them, but it takes months and months and months. And even my expectations with the garden, that within 1 year or less than a year, it would be this beautiful blooming space full of flowers. The expectations were unrealistic, and I think if I went into it knowing that it would be a lot of work, because I'd always rented and always had landlords that took care of the gardens, and they were always very, very small gardens. And so I think if I knew just how much work it was, then at least I wouldn't have the expectations that I would be able to achieve so much with the space and the time that I had. And maybe I would have been a little bit more gentle myself and put less pressure on myself to make everything perfect really quickly. Alex just came in for a chat, and then all of the animals decided that something good must be happening, like a walk or whatever, and so they were all squawking and it was chaos for a minute. But getting back to the conversation, I wish I'd known so that I could be more prepared, both how much more free in some ways this living here would make me feel. It makes me feel so free and peaceful, being able to come home from a busy day out in a city or a town if we've gone out somewhere for the day like Cardiff or beyond, and then coming back just feels like a big breath of fresh air. It feels free knowing that we're so far away that nobody apart from our neighbour can really drop in on us without giving us warning. It's not like anybody's just going to turn up. We have our own space away from the world, and yeah, there's just something so wonderfully freeing about that, and I really, really love it. But also, in some ways, living here makes me feel really trapped. I think I thought I was going to learn to drive immediately, and it's something that I've actually had quite a lot of anxiety around, especially, I guess, because I left it so late in life to start learning. And I had some negative experiences with lessons before I started doing lessons with Alex. And so I don't have that freedom and autonomy when I want to go. Sometimes that being away from the world is a wonderful thing. Sometimes being so far away from everything is really difficult, and it just makes me feel like I can't get out and I can't escape. But most of the time it is an incredibly freeing feeling. This is a bit of a trivial one, but I wish I'd been more prepared for how everything, when you live somewhere remote, especially if it's quite wild and exposed like this is, everything revolves around the weather. And I know it's a very British thing to say. Not only does the weather tend to be more extreme here, but if you do live in a town or a city or even a village where there are pubs, for example, then you tend to hop from one place to another without the outside necessarily having to be your main form of entertainment. Whereas when you live somewhere like this, I might have talked about this in a previous video actually, but when you live somewhere like this, your main form of entertainment, I suppose, is going outside, going on walks. Okay, Lupa, we get it, you want attention. And it's a beautiful place to do that, and I feel very, very, very fortunate to get to live somewhere so wonderful. But when there are 40km/h winds and the rain is coming down so hard directly into your face, which is basically what happened every single day apart from about 5 days for 5 months when we first moved in here, you have to just kind of get on with it. Otherwise you're cooped up in the house all the time. And it does change your level of enjoyment. It doesn't necessarily have to take away from your enjoyment, but you don't do as many things. You don't obviously go and have picnics outside, for example, when it's tipping down with rain. This winter, it's been glorious. It's just been sunny pretty much every day until this week. But the benefit of the very extreme weather, and there not really being an escape from it, is that it has really strengthened me to just get on with it. And every time I see my friends and my family that live more normal lives now, I'm always surprised by how a little shower can put them off actually wanting to do anything. But I do wish I was more practically prepared and had bought the proper clothes rather than only owning a wardrobe full of linen dresses, which was certainly the case when I moved in here, because having the right gear for it really, really does add to the enjoyment of being out in it. On a more serious note, for number 8, I wish I knew that just because I was moving miles and miles away from everything I knew, it didn't mean that suddenly I would become any less lost. I've always had this urge in me to just disappear and go somewhere completely off-grid or completely foreign to me. Wales is actually the 3rd country that I have lived in, and I've never really been anywhere for long enough to really feel that it's home to me. I think because of that early start of moving around in my childhood, I've always assumed that every time life got really difficult or every time I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, a move would fix everything. And so I've spent a lot of my life thinking and dreaming about moving across the world or moving to different countries. And when I moved here, I felt very stagnant in my career. I felt very creatively uninspired, and I thought that being far away from everybody would give me the headspace and also the inspiration, because it's beautiful here, to be able to move on with my creativity and be really inspired again, and that everything would just kind of fall into place because of being in a new environment. But that hasn't happened at all. I think it's actually been harder to create here than it has been to create in anywhere else that I've lived before. I feel just as lost, if not more lost, in many aspects as I did before I lived here. Running away didn't really fix or solve anything, and I see so often in other people something that I've recognised in myself, which is feeling like something isn't right in life or something needs to change, and therefore always assuming that that thing that needs to change is to do with place and location of living. And don't get me wrong, place and location of living is incredibly important and does bring so much and change so much about your life and your outlook and how you go about your day to day. And this actually leads really nicely into number 9, which is I wish I knew just how much this place would change about my life, just not necessarily the things that I expected and hoped it would change or bring. Living here has been kind of an eternal autumn-winter for me, by which I mean that it's been a really long period of release and transition and transformation. It's allowed me to work through so many of my shadow aspects and release everything that hasn't been working or wasn't working for so many years before. It's just been a really long period of lots and lots of personal development and self-work, and that hasn't necessarily always been easy, but sometimes it's been really fun and happy. But a combination of most of the things I've talked about, the incessant weather, living far away from all of my friends and family, but a combination of most of the things I mentioned, so the incessant weather, living far away from all of my friends and family, living far away from any sense of comparison to other people, amongst lots of other things, has really allowed me to fully focus on my own life, and the discomfort there has brought up lots of the hidden aspects of myself that I have pushed down and not wanted to ever sit with or acknowledge. When you move somewhere that is isolating and has challenging conditions in some way or another, I think that you begin a really intense period of growth, and there's so much growth to be done and discovered in places like that. So I guess summarising on the last 2 points, if I were talking to previous me, I would have said, not all growth is about your career, not all growth is about your creativity. Buckle up, this is going to be a wild ride. You're going to learn so much about yourself, and you're going to be such a more stable, grounded, balanced person at the end of it than you were going into it. And the final thing that I wish I knew before we moved here was just what a beautiful place it is, with such a rich culture. Because, I mean, Alex has been coming here for his whole life, but I had never been to Pembrokeshire, apart from one time to visit, maybe 2 times to visit his family, and then we moved in. And I just did not know what to expect, but I feel like I've missed out on so much because of all the years that I could have been visiting this wonderful place with the most incredible coastline that I've ever seen, with rugged hills and burial grounds and so much history and so much culture and the most lovely people. It's a really, really special place, and it feels like magic still exists here. I'm very, very grateful to be here, and whenever we do go away and then we come home, it feels like coming back to peace and being able to breathe out. And we definitely won't be here forever, as I've said many times in my videos, for a long list of reasons for another day. But coming home here always makes me feel so, so lucky to get to live here, and I really crave that feeling of being here. And I know that Pembrokeshire and this particular place has really wormed its way under my skin, and it will remain there for as long as I live, probably. Thank you for coming along and watching this video today. I know it's been a little bit different than normal being inside. I hope it hasn't been boring. If you do want to watch any more videos, and I have quite a few more being uploaded onto my membership, as well as extra things like downloadable prints and wallpapers and the ability to vote on polls and things like that, and also a community Discord that I'm only just learning how to use at the moment. So I would love to see you there, but if not, I will see you in my next video, and I hope that wherever you are in the world, you are having a wonderful day. Bye bye!